talking about deep self-power, the question arises if this is relevant for the individual Homo sapiens or also for the nation, for the country, for entities of land. Yesterday, I attended a speech of Ulrike Guérot in Austria, in the city of Kufstein, and she mentioned two issues which made me ponder. The first is she talked about the elephant in the room being that European and US interests don't always match. That's a big elephant in the room that we have, especially currently with the Ukraine-Russia issue. Another issue that she mentioned was that apparently in the 90s there was brief talk, interest, policy consideration of a larger Eurasian project, talking about Lisbon all the way to Vladivostok, possibly creating one entity, one political entity, whatever it would be called. That is beyond the scope of this video. Please recall that Vladivostok is very close to the Japanese Isles. It's the Russian area in the far east, in the north, which goes all the way to the Pacific. And if you were to have a country or political entity from Lisbon all the way to Vladivostok, this is quite inspiring, quite interesting. Now, looking at it in a straightforward way, at the end of the day, humans are usually connected and usually have interests within their own geographical sphere, meaning if you have at the end of the day, Europe is not really a continent. It's more like a peninsula of the larger Eurasian continent that moves to the west. At the end of the day, it is one large landmass. You have Europe, you have parts of the Middle East, you have India, you have Southeast Asia, and you have Russia and China in the Far East. This all being one landmass. Now, if you look into the animal kingdom, no animal would pay allegiance to a entity that is on another island. They typically stick to their geographical landmass that they all have in common. And of course, there are some historical issues related to the strong connection of Europe to the American continent, which is fine, which makes sense. Nevertheless, if you look at it from a very straightforward perspective, from a perspective of attempting to to reign your area in the best interest of the people who live there, it does make more sense to actually reach out a hand and try to come to terms from a European perspective to the lands in the East in order to minimize the current threat that has been created, which is definitely not in European interest to be divided. This is, well, as we know, division is always a tool for power. How could the British rule India, such a vast land? This was only possible by dividing certain tribes, certain interests on the Indian subcontinent in order to rule it. So if I were standing at any strategic table making policy and attempting to rule over Europe, being outside of Europe, being somewhere on another so-called continent, then of course it would make a lot of sense to divide Europe and Russia and so forth. So the big elephant is indeed in the room.